NAFTA to USMCA. Our first story today centers on international trade in North America, and we're glad to have you watching. I'm Carl Azus with your objective explanation of world events. A new trade agreement has been reached between negotiators for the U.S., Canada, and Mexico. The three countries have been working to do this for much of Donald Trump's term as U.S. president. A major promise he'd made on the campaign trail was that he'd renegotiate NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement. The new deal, which was reached on Sunday night, is called the USMCA, the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement. It's not finalized. First, the leaders of all three countries have to sign it. President Trump says he plans to do that by the end of November. Then, the legislatures of all three countries have to approve it. In the U.S. Congress, this involves the Senate, which has the constitutional authority to approve treaties, and the House of Representatives, which also has authority when treaties are related to foreign trade. And like NAFTA, the USMCA is all about trade between the three North American countries. It involves a lot of compromise between them. For one thing, the new agreement is expected to help American farmers by allowing them to send more dairy, poultry, and eggs to Canada. But some Canadian dairy farmers are concerned it'll hurt their business. One criticism of NAFTA was that it led American automakers to shift production to Mexico, where it can be done less expensively because workers there earn less money. The USMCA is intended to encourage U.S. car makers to do more of their manufacturing in the U.S., but critics say it could lead them to do more in Asia. So what will actually happen? Time will tell.
Weeks of bitter negotiations, an American president who would not back down, threats to leave Canada out of a modernized NAFTA, and then at the 11th hour, a deal. Here's what we know. It will not be called NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement from 1994 that Trump has called the worst deal ever signed. It will be the USMCA, the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement. Now, the Americans and the Canadians were just bitterly divided only days ago, and now they've issued a joint statement. They promise this deal will help the middle class and create good jobs across North America. It provides more access to Canada's protected dairy market. That's a relatively small part of U.S.-Canada trade, but it's a Trump campaign promise that he hopes will help farmers in Wisconsin and New York. Canada wanted to preserve a dispute resolution mechanism. That stays. And there are higher labor, wage, and environmental standards. Cars imported duty-free in the NAFTA zone must have 75% of the parts made in North America. And to remain duty-free, a car sold in North America must have 2/5 of its content made by workers earning at least $16 an hour. In theory, that means higher wages for all North American workers and more domestic production. Now, the whole thing expires in 16 years if it is not renegotiated. Bottom line, it removes Trump's threat of 25% auto tariffs, but it does not kill the steel and aluminum tariffs that American manufacturers and automakers oppose. Now it faces Congress with a 60-day clock now ticking.
10-second trivia. An estimated 28% of Americans were sickened by a flu outbreak that began in what year? 2018, 2009, 1947, or 1918? The Spanish flu, the most severe flu outbreak of the 20th century, started in 1918 and sickened more than a quarter of the population. The Spanish flu killed an estimated 675,000 Americans and tens of millions of people worldwide, more than the number who died in the First World War. And while last winter's flu outbreak wasn't nearly that bad, it was still the deadliest in decades. It killed an estimated 80,000 Americans, the most deaths from the flu since 1976 and possibly farther back than that. The 2017-2018 flu season had another superlative. It was severe across all age groups. The first year that happened, according to the U.S. Centers for Disease Control. And there were 3 weeks in a row when the entire continental U.S. was highly affected. What about the flu vaccine? Scientists say last winter's vaccine effectiveness was around 40%. By that, they mean that people who got the flu shot had a 40% less risk of having to go to the doctor for flu treatment. It was one of the less effective vaccines in recent years. Still, the CDC says that getting the vaccine is the best way to prevent getting the flu. How about this winter? Well, in Australia, where winter just wrapped up, there was a relatively mild flu season this year. What happens there can be one indicator of what happens in the U.S. winter months ahead.
It's amazing how much more we know about how to predict the flu. What they're trying to do now is predict the flu very much in the way that you predict the weather.
Hurricane season.
NOAA is predicting a below-average season.
Many parts of the state were under a hurricane warning early Thursday.
I know, all kidding aside, we don't always get the weather right, but this is pretty interesting. They use mathematical modeling to sort of predict where flu virus is going to be most dominant, but then they look at real-time data, and the real-time data is fascinating. People searching for flu on Google, for example, and they assimilate all that information to give you what are called hotspots, but they can go even deeper than that. This is a particular project that comes out of the Columbia School that you can actually figure out which week is going to be the worst in your particular city. But also for hospitals, they could be anticipating more patients coming in, so leaving more surge capacity, more beds available, having more medications, flu vaccine, things like that on standby. But this is sort of where we're headed with regard to predicting when things are going to get really bad.
I'd like to think that my anchoring style is not robotic, that it couldn't be replaced by a digital human. But could jobs that hinge on human interaction one day be filled by computer-generated avatars? Critics and some attorneys have raised concerns about this, calling for complete transparency so people who see digital humans know right away they're not actual humans. Beyond that, though, how would our lives be changed if more of the customer service representatives we interacted with were computerized?
In the future, you'll absolutely have an artificial version of yourself that goes out performing tasks that you really don't want to do.
Yeah, right. That sounds too good to be true. Like Avatar or something.
Our CEO, he was the technologist behind Avatar and a whole array of different movies.
And now he's using that Hollywood magic to change what it means to work.
I am Cora. I am here to help you.
Meet Cora. She's a digital version of an actual human.
Cora's consistent, Cora never sleeps, Cora's able to answer questions 24/7. She's
Okay. If she's so great, why don't you just hire her?
At some point in 2018, going live with Cora is our ambition.
Cora is currently being tested as a customer service rep at one of Great Britain's largest banks.
I've lost my card.
Do not worry. Losing a card can happen to anyone.
There have been other virtual agents which are avatar-based, but I haven't seen anything that is quite as realistic.
Cora is kind of like a chat bot,
Do you have mobile banking?
but one that analyzes your facial expressions and speech. And it was developed here at a New Zealand-based artificial intelligence company called Soul Machine.
The whole point of it is to make machines more like us, to sort of understand the intersection between computer science and human consciousness.
Soul Machines have sold a handful of avatars to companies across the world.
Welcome to Mercedes-Benz.
Looks familiar, right? So, as these avatars enter the workforce, does that mean that us humans will be replaced?
What is actually being replaced is the human capacity to do stuff quickly and repeatedly.
That's a relief. Sort of. As technology advances, hundreds of millions of workers worldwide could lose their job in the coming decades. A scary thought, but also a chance to approach work differently.
Perhaps in 10 years, perhaps in 20 years. We need to look at how we define what work is. That is a sort of much bigger question we need to answer as a society.
After all, Soul Machine sees a world where we each have a digital twin.
In the future, we totally believe that there will be millions, if not billions, of artificial humans that exist.
And if you could send your fake self to the office every day, how would you choose to spend your time?
The Ferris wheel has seen a lot of first kisses and maybe even some breakups since its debut in 1893, but it's not often the site of holy matrimony. That's what a Missouri couple had in mind when they climbed aboard the Branson Ferris wheel recently. They met in 1994 but lost touch for a while. After getting reconnected, then they got permanently connected on board the wheel. The vows, the rings, the commitment, all part of the 15-minute ceremony. It's a fitting setting to embark on all of life's ups and downs as the world turns through thick and thin air, the ride of the rest of their lives. And as our affiliate KYTV says, it proves love is in the air. And it's where we make a fair landing here on CNN 10. I'm Carl Azuz.